The moon hung low that night, vast, solemn, and heavy, as though it carried a secret it dared not tell. Its pale light bathed the stone walls of the silver keep, the stronghold of a kingdom that no longer slept in innocence. The wind whispered through the banners of the Alpha King's crest, stirring the shadows like restless spirits. Yet within the great hall, the Alpha King stood alone before the open balcony, his eyes fixed on the horizon, on a silence he could no longer trust. His name was Kyle, the moonborn Alpha, first of his bloodline, guardian of the Old Covenant. His fur, when he took the wolf form, gleamed like black fire beneath the heavens. His voice could shake armies, his gaze could bend hearts. But tonight, neither his strength nor his throne comforted him, for the stars, which once sang for his victories, had dimmed, and in their silence, Kyle felt a trembling in the air that no warrior could ignore. Below the mountain citadel stretched a land once pure, now stained. His people had broken the law of the light, devouring what was forbidden, turning their claws against one another. Blood cried from the soil. The wolves of the valley had tasted the fruit of pride, and heaven had turned its face away. Kyle had not joined in their rebellion, yet he felt their guilt like fire beneath his skin. For an Alpha's bond was not of rule alone, but of burden. What they had done his soul could not escape. He turned from the moon and walked through the dim hall, where the torches flickered as though afraid to burn. His steps echoed in the silence, the kind of silence that breathes before judgment. On the throne carved from obsidian and silver, the marks of 10 generations glowed faintly, each Alpha before him a witness to his choice. And though no voice spoke, Kale felt the heavens watching, weighing his heart, measuring the cost. He paused at the steps of the throne. His reflection shimmered on the polished marble floor, fractured by tears that had fallen earlier that night. He had pleaded for mercy, not for himself, but for those who would never understand his love. He had seen the decree written in light. The curse shall fall upon the kingdom at dawn. And in that moment, Kale made the choice no mortal or beast should bear, to stand in the path of wrath and let it strike him instead. The moonlight touched his face as he whispered to the emptiness, "If death must come, let it come through me." The words trembled like prayer, like promise. He felt the ancient power stir, the bond between king and kingdom tightening, pulling his spirit toward the storm gathering above. His heartbeat slowed, the wind shifted. Somewhere beyond the mountains, thunder rolled, soft, distant, patient. Kale's general entered quietly, old Iran loyal to the end. His voice broke the stillness. "My king, the seers say the curse cannot be undone. They say dawn will swallow us all." Kale's gaze did not move. His words were calm, but each carried the weight of eternity. "Then let dawn find me standing." And in that moment, Aaron saw it, the sorrow behind the king's calm, the kind that only love too deep for words could create. He dismissed the guard and walked once more to the balcony. Below, the sleeping city shimmered beneath silver light, unaware of the doom hanging above it. He watched them, children, soldiers, mothers, all breathing the borrowed peace of a final night. His chest tightened, not in fear, but in compassion. For he knew he would trade everything, his throne, his blood, his very howl, if only the dawn could spare them. And when the wind rose once more, carrying the scent of rain and iron, Kyle closed his eyes. He bowed his head beneath the weeping moon and whispered one last vow. "If sacrifice is the path to salvation, then let my death open the gate." The moon shimmered, dimmed, and for a fleeting heartbeat it seemed the heavens themselves trembled, as if they too could feel the sorrow of the Alpha King. Chapter 2. Dawn did not rise, it crawled. The first light crept through a shroud of grey clouds, thin as dying breath. Across the silver plains, the wolves stirred uneasily. The air was wrong, too heavy, too quiet, as if the world itself waited for a blow it could not escape. The birds had vanished, the streams had stilled, and in the sky above, the moon lingered long past her time, her pale glow refusing to yield to the sun. The Alpha King stood at the balcony still, watching the horizon blush with strange crimson light. Every instinct in him screamed that the curse had begun its descent. The bond between him and the kingdom pulsed painfully, a living thread of magic that tied every heartbeat of his people to his own. He could feel their fear, their anger, their ignorance, all flooding through his veins like poison. Each pulse burned, each breath hurt. Far below, the council of elders gathered in the courtyard, voices rising like wolves in a storm. They had seen the skies turn red, and terror twisted their wisdom into accusation. "This is his fault," one shouted. "The king has angered the gods with his pride." Another barked, "Why should one rule over us while heaven judges all?" Their fear bred rebellion, and their rebellion bred blindness. They could not see that the one they accused was the only shield between them and destruction. Kyle listened from above. He did not answer. The words pierced, but he had already chosen the wound. To speak would invite war, to explain would lessen the sacrifice. So he bore their hatred in silence, his eyes glimmering faintly beneath the clouded light. He whispered only to the wind, "Forgive them. They know not what they curse." Lightning tore across the northern sky, splitting the clouds like an open wound. From its core descended a sound, low, vast, unearthly, the roar of the coming judgment. Trees bent, wolves cowered, the earth began to tremble. And then it came, the scent of burning air, the taste of fear on every tongue. The curse was near. In the palace square, the people gathered in panic. Mothers clutched their young. Warriors howled to the heavens, begging for mercy. The priests of the moon tore their robes, seeking a sign. But no voice answered them. Only the wind carried a whisper, a name, Kale's name, echoing faintly like a plea and a warning both. The Alpha King descended the grand stairway, his steps steady, cloak trailing like night itself. The crowd parted but did not kneel. Their eyes were filled with confusion, some with blame, others with hollow hope. He could feel their hearts, beating against his own like restless drums. One young soldier shouted, "If the gods will strike, why should you not fall first, O king?" The words hung heavy in the air. Kyle paused, looked at him and said quietly, "Perhaps I shall." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some gasped, others laughed in disbelief. None understood the truth buried in his calm. The curse was a storm that demanded blood, and his would be the offering. The heavens would not be satisfied until the one pure heart stood in the place of the guilty. And as the thunder drew closer, shaking the stones beneath his feet, Kyle raised his head toward the dim, trembling moon. His voice, low but steady, carried across the silence of the city. "Let it come," he said. "Let it find me first." And for a fleeting instant, before the lightning broke again, the moon seemed to waver, and a single tear of light fell from her face, vanishing into the clouds below. Chapter 3. The storm had gathered its full strength. Lightning burned across the horizon, painting the world in flashes of white fire. The wolves of the mountains howled without pause, their cries echoing through the ravines like mourning songs for a king not yet fallen. But Kale, the Alpha of light and shadow, walked calmly through the tempest, his cloak soaked with rain and moonlight. Each step he took sent ripples through the bond between him and the land. The curse could feel him, approaching the altar where destiny waited. The path led him through the ancient forest of Vanir, where the roots of the first Alphas slept. Trees bowed as he passed, their branches dripping with silver rain. The air shimmered with strange light, a mixture of sorrow and sanctity. Kale could feel the pull of heaven above and the pull of the earth below, both claiming him, both unwilling to let go. The blood within him, royal, pure, untainted, began to burn, as though the curse sought to draw it out before its time. Behind him, a company of warriors followed from afar, those still loyal, hearts heavy and uncertain. "My king!" one cried out through the storm. "You must not go alone." But Kale did not turn. His voice carried over the thunder, low and steady. "This is a path no blade can defend, and no wolf can walk beside me. The curse does not hunger for battle, it hungers for blood." His eyes glowed faintly, the ancient light of his lineage shining through the rain. "And I will give it mine." He reached the valley where the river of moons began, a sacred place where, legend said, heaven and earth once touched. At its center stood an altar carved from moonstone, old as creation, marked by the howls of generations long gone. Lightning crowned it like a diadem of grief. Kyle approached slowly, every breath a vow, every step a surrender. The moment he set foot on the altar's stone, the wind ceased and the entire valley fell silent, as if creation itself held its breath. He looked to the heavens. The clouds parted, revealing the pale face of the moon, weeping light through the rain. Her glow fell upon him like a hand upon a child. "I was not the one who sinned," he whispered, "yet I will bear the punishment. Let their blood be counted within mine, that they may live." His voice broke slightly, the sound of strength meeting sorrow. As he lifted his hands, the ancient runes etched into the altar flared to life, glowing red and gold. The mark of the blood covenant awakened, a binding older than time. The curse, sensing its vessel, began to descend in full. The air thickened, charged with the taste of iron and divine wrath. The first drop of Kale's blood fell onto the altar stone, and the world trembled. From the city beyond the hills came cries. The people saw the lightning gather above the forest, a crown of flame over the mountains. But they did not understand. Some cursed his name, others hid in fear. "He has brought this upon us," they shouted. "Let the curse take him." And as their voices rose in fury, Kale felt each word like a blade sinking into his chest, not in anger, but in heartbreak. He knelt on the cold stone, rain and blood mingling beneath him. The curse's power lashed against him, tearing through his flesh, searing his soul. Yet even as agony tore at him, he whispered through the pain, "For them, I endure." The heavens thundered in answer, a sound that was both fury and grief. And as the storm reached its peak, the moon dimmed once more. Her light folded inward, as though she could not bear to witness what must come. Kyle, the Alpha King, bowed his head beneath that weeping glow, and somewhere in the distance between wrath and mercy, the first seal of salvation broke. Chapter 4. The heavens grew silent, not in peace but in mourning. Every sound in the valley seemed to kneel. Even the rain fell softly now, as though afraid to strike the earth. The air shimmered with unseen power, rippling with sorrow and awe. Kyle stood upon the altar, his form cloaked in light and shadow. The curse had descended fully. It pressed upon him like the weight of mountains, a holy burden that sought to crush both spirit and flesh. He felt it, not as fire, but as separation. The bond that had once tied him to the light trembled, thinning into threads. For the first time, Kyle felt the loneliness of one who stands between wrath and mercy. The pain was not in his body. It was in the tearing of his heart. Each heartbeat became an echo of the people he bore, their fear, their pride, their guilt. He felt them all, and loved them still. Lightning flashed across the horizon, followed by a long, distant roll of thunder. The sound carried through the forest and over the city, waking those who still dared to hope. Some looked to the mountains and saw a radiant glow in the clouds, believing salvation was near. Others saw only the fury of the skies and spat his name with bitterness. "The king is lost," they murmured. "He has failed us all." Kyle heard every word, though they were far away. Their disbelief struck deeper than any blade could. For though they cursed him, he endured for them. Though they mocked, he stood unbroken. His voice rose softly, carried by the wind, not in protest, but in prayer. "Let not their blindness condemn them. I will carry it all, even their scorn, even their silence." The altar beneath him glowed with threads of crimson light. The runes of old pulsed in rhythm with his heart, and with each pulse, a shadow lifted from the kingdom. The curse, vast and ancient, was being drawn into him. The sky wept rain in torrents, as if heaven itself could feel the exchange. The rivers swelled, the trees bowed, and the moon, pale and dim, lingered above like a grieving witness. Kyle's vision blurred. Around him the world seemed to drift between realms, between the seen and the eternal. He saw faces of those he loved, children laughing by the river, warriors raising their swords, the old singing under starlight. He saw them free, unaware of the price that would be paid for their peace. And though his strength faltered, a faint smile touched his lips. Love was heavier than death, yet lighter than sorrow, and he bore it willingly. The storm raged again, wind howling like a chorus of mourning wolves. The mountain trembled underfoot, and yet Kyle did not move. He stood in stillness, every breath now a whisper of eternity. The light around him grew brighter, fierce and beautiful, wrapping him in a radiance both dreadful and divine. The curse screamed, resisting its own defeat, but it could not break him. Far below, the people gathered in the city's edge, staring at the blazing horizon. Some fell to their knees, realizing too late what was being done. Others turned away, unable to face the brilliance of a love they could not understand. And amid their confusion, a sudden stillness filled the air, the calm that comes before the final heartbeat of destiny. Kyle lifted his face once more to the moon, now faint, weeping silver tears into the dark clouds. "It is finished," he whispered, and though no one heard him, the words reached heaven itself. The rain stopped, the wind bowed, and for a long moment, time forgot to move. The Alpha King stood in silence beneath the weeping moon, a figure of sorrow, glory, and endless love. Chapter 5. The storm passed like a sigh torn from heaven's chest. The wind grew tired, the thunder ceased its protest, and the rain, once fierce and unrelenting, softened into mist. The mountains still glistened with silver tears, the rivers carried the scent of lightning, and the sky hung dim, emptied of both wrath and light. It was as though creation itself had exhaled, exhausted from what it had witnessed. Upon the altar, where the tempest had raged, there now lay stillness, a holy, aching stillness. The light that had wrapped the Alpha King faded into quiet radiance, shimmering faintly upon the stone. No cry was heard, no roar of pain or triumph, only silence, vast and sacred. The earth did not dare to move. Even the wolves of the wild bowed their heads, sensing that something eternal had just passed between heaven and the world. Far away, in the valley below, the people stirred from their fear. They looked to the mountains and found no fire, no storm, only a strange glow lingering in the clouds. The curse that had tormented the land was gone. The air smelled clean again, the rivers flowed freely, and the sickness that had crept through their fields was lifted. Yet they could not name what had changed, nor could they see the price. The council of elders gathered once more, their voices softer now. "The curse has lifted," one said. "But the king, where is he?" Another whispered, "Perhaps the gods have spared him." Yet none dared climb the mountain. Fear, or perhaps guilt, chained their steps. They celebrated deliverance, not knowing the deliverer had already been taken. In the city's heart, the people returned to their homes. Children laughed again, and torches were relit along the streets. Songs of relief rose into the night, and drums echoed faintly through the restored calm. But above all their joy the moon hung dim and weary, refusing to shine fully. It was as though she mourned while they rejoiced. The loyal general, old Iran, could not rest. Something in his spirit stirred, a knowing, heavy, and unshakable. As others slept in relief, he gathered a small band of soldiers and began the ascent to the altar. The mountain paths were wet and silent, their breath visible in the cold. No sound but the crunch of boots and the whisper of leaves accompanied their climb. When they reached the valley of the altar, they found the ground bathed in faint silver light. The air shimmered with peace and sorrow, and there, upon the ancient stone, they found the Alpha King's cloak drenched in moonlight, yet unstained by any blood. The runes upon the altar glowed softly, pulsing as though alive, then dimmed, like a heart giving its final beat. Iran fell to his knees. His voice broke into the wind. "He has borne it," he whispered. "He has taken it all." The soldiers stood in silence, heads bowed. No body, no voice, only the faint warmth lingering in the air, the trace of one who had given everything. The moon, now pale and trembling, drifted behind a veil of cloud. And in that moment, all creation seemed to whisper a single truth, that only heaven and the earth could hear. The Alpha King is gone, yet his kingdom lives. Chapter 6. Seasons turned, slow and soundless, as if the world itself feared to speak of what had been lost. The forests bloomed again, greener than before. Rivers sparkled with new life, and laughter returned to the valleys. The curse was no more. The people tilled their lands without fear, built homes upon once barren soil, and sang under a moon that had forgotten how to weep. But though life flourished, memory withered. The mountain, once a place of awe, became nothing more than a silhouette against the horizon. In the great city, the name of the Alpha King was still spoken, at first in reverence, then in routine, and finally in mere history. He was a great ruler, they would say, but his time has passed. Songs once written in his honor became fragments of old poetry sung by wandering minstrels. The children listened, eyes wide, yet asked no questions, for to them he was just another legend. The elders, burdened by guilt, built a shrine at the mountain's base, a simple monument of stone and moonwood. But as decades passed, the wood weathered and the carvings faded. Festivals were held not in remembrance, but in celebration of harvests and victories. The sacred became the ordinary, and gratitude dissolved into comfort. Only one man still climbed the mountain, old heir, now grey and bent, yet steadfast as the northern wind. Each year he ascended alone, carrying a single lantern. He would kneel before the altar whispering, "I remember my king. I remember." The stones did not answer, but the wind always sighed softly through the trees, as though the mountain itself whispered back, "And I remember you." In time, heir too was gone. His lantern was found one morning at the foot of the mountain, its flame still flickering though no hand held it. The people saw it as a sign of blessing, not realizing it was a farewell. The last living heart that carried the king's memory had gone to join him in eternal rest. Generations rose and fell. Castles were rebuilt, banners changed, kings came and went. The story of the Alpha King became a tale mothers told to hush restless children, a fable, not a truth. He loved his people so much, they would say with a smile, that he gave himself for them. But few believed it, and fewer still understood. Yet, though forgotten by men, the land did not forget. The mountain remained sacred in silence. Its air always smelled faintly of rain, and flowers bloomed there even in winter. Travelers who passed through swore they could hear faint music in the wind, the echo of a voice that once prayed for mercy and love. They felt peace there, though they could not say why. The moon, too, never shone the same. She carried a scar, a soft dimness upon her edge, like the memory of a tear. On certain nights when the world slept deeply, she would cast a beam upon the mountain's peak, illuminating the old altar in silver light. And for that brief moment, the forgotten became remembered once more. Thus the kingdom thrived, blessed unknowing, beloved by a king they no longer recalled. And the heavens, in their quiet watch, waited for the day when remembrance would rise again, when hearts would awaken to the truth that had never died. Chapter 7. It began with a dream, soft as moonlight, fierce as destiny. In the royal palace, a young prince named Aidan lay restless beneath the silken canopy of his bed. Though he was heir to the throne, his nights were haunted by visions no crown could silence. He dreamed of a mountain veiled in storm, of a man bathed in light and sorrow, and of a voice whispering through the winds, "Remember me." Each dawn he awoke trembling, with tears he could not explain. The elders told him these were echoes of his imagination, the residue of royal anxieties, but Aidan knew better. The dreams felt alive. They did not fade as the day brightened. They lingered, wrapping his thoughts like threads of silver. He would stare out his window toward the northern mountains, the same mountains that his tutors dismissed as ancient myth, and feel something deep within him ache, like a memory buried beneath time. One night, the dream deepened. He found himself standing in a great field of light. The air shimmered like crystal. Before him stood a figure cloaked in white, his face hidden by radiance. Aidan could not speak, for the very air trembled with reverence. The figure raised his hand and touched the prince's chest. Instantly, Aidan saw flashes, the storm, the altar, the runes glowing red, and the sound of a voice whispering, "The curse was mine to bear." Then the light broke, and Aidan woke with a cry. He ran to the old archives at dawn, searching scrolls and forgotten records. There, among dust and decay, he found fragments of the old prophecy. When the moon forgets to shine, and the earth forgets his name, the blood of the Alpha shall awaken and memory shall return. Aidan's heart pounded. Could the dreams mean that he carried that blood, that he was the heir of the one they had forgotten? Days turned into weeks. The visions grew stronger. He saw the same man, the same sorrowful king, standing upon the altar beneath a weeping sky. Sometimes Aidan heard the cries of wolves. Other times he felt warmth and peace, as though love itself flowed through him. The boundary between dream and waking blurred. The court physicians called it a sickness of spirit, but Aidan called it a calling. He began to wander the palace gardens at night, whispering to the moon. "Who are you?" he asked the unseen voice that haunted his heart, and each time the wind would stir the leaves and murmur faintly, "Your father's king." He didn't understand what it meant, but each whisper left him breathless, trembling with awe. At last, one moonless night, he could bear the silence no more. He saddled his horse, cloaked himself in white, and rode toward the northern range. The guards called after him, but he did not turn back. The dreams had become a compass, and his soul could no longer deny the pull. The mountain awaited, shrouded in mist and mystery. By dawn, he reached the base of the sacred peak. The air was heavy with dew, and the scent of ancient rain lingered. Aidan dismounted, falling to his knees upon the soil. "Show me," he whispered into the wind. "Show me what I was born to remember." And for the first time, the clouds above parted. A single beam of moonlight, pale and trembling, fell upon the path ahead. It was as though heaven had answered. The journey to remembrance had begun. Chapter 8. The mountain rose before him like the spine of the world, ancient, unyielding, and crowned with mist. Aidan stood at its base, his heart trembling in awe. The air was cool, thin, almost alive. Each step upward felt like a crossing, from the world of men into the realm of memory. The trees whispered as he passed, their leaves glistening faintly with dew. The higher he climbed, the quieter everything became, until even his heartbeat sounded like an echo in eternity. Then it came, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves, a voice carried by the wind. It was neither man nor spirit, yet both. "You have come far, son of dust," it said. Aidan froze. The sound seemed to come from everywhere, from the sky, the earth, the very air. "Do you know why you climb?" The prince tried to answer, but his voice failed. The wind sighed again, warm and ancient. "You climb because the blood remembers what the mind forgets." With every step, the world seemed to change. The rocks glowed faintly beneath his feet, pulsing like old veins of light. The trees grew silver bark, their branches humming softly. The mist around him shimmered, parting just enough to reveal fragments of vision, flashes of the past. A figure crowned in moonlight. A kingdom bowed in silence. The altar glowing red beneath a storm. Aidan fell to his knees, overwhelmed. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Why do I feel as though I've lost something I never knew I had?" The voice returned, this time closer, almost tender. "Because love that is eternal cannot die, only be forgotten. And now, remembrance has chosen you." The word settled into his soul like a seed bursting open in spring. He continued the ascent. Rain began to fall, not harshly, but gently, like the earth's tears of welcome. The wind circled him, carrying faint whispers, fragments of ancient songs. He bore it for you. He bore it for all. The melody was unlike anything he had ever heard, haunting, sacred, and filled with a peace that hurt to feel. As night descended, the mountain began to glow under the gaze of a swollen moon. Aidan stopped to rest beside a stream that shimmered like liquid glass. He looked into the water and gasped. The reflection was not his. Staring back was the Alpha King, cloaked in light, eyes filled with infinite sorrow and love. The king's lips moved, though no sound came. Aidan reached out, and the image rippled, vanishing into the current. Shaken, he rose again. His body ached, but his spirit burned. Each step upward now felt guided, as though unseen hands steadied him when he stumbled. And though the wind grew stronger, its voice no longer frightened him. It comforted him. It spoke of a love that transcended blood, of a promise older than time, of a bond between creator and creation that could never be severed. At last, he reached a ledge near the summit. The altar lay just ahead, ancient, cracked and glowing faintly in the moonlight. Aidan fell before it, chest heaving, tears flowing freely. "I am here," he whispered into the silence. "I have come." The wind stilled. Then, in the hush that followed, the voice spoke one final time, clearer, deeper, eternal. "And I have waited." The mountain exhaled. The stars shimmered, and Aidan, trembling beneath the light of the forgotten altar, knew that he was no longer alone. Chapter 9. The night wrapped Aidan in silver stillness. He knelt before the ancient altar, breath shallow, as moonlight poured over him like a river of glass. The stones beneath his palms pulsed faintly, alive with old energy. The mountain hummed, low, resonant, as though remembering the song of 1,000 years. Then, from that stillness, the voice returned, not through the wind this time, but from within his very soul. "You carry what was never lost," it whispered. Aidan's heart thundered. "What do you mean?" he breathed. The air shimmered before him, and from the light emerged a vision, the same man from his dreams, clothed in radiance, his eyes deep as dawn. The Alpha King. But this time, Aidan could see his face clearly, noble, sorrowful, serene. It was a face both human and divine. The king extended his hand, and when Aidan touched it, the world dissolved into memory. He saw the ancient kingdom again, whole and glorious before the curse. He saw the people turning from the light, their pride rising like a tide. And then he saw the king standing alone upon the altar, offering himself. The storm, the lightning, the silence, all unfolded before him, not as story, but as truth. He felt the agony, the love, the weight of sacrifice. Tears streamed down his face. You took their punishment," Aidan whispered. The vision nodded. The weight of their transgression was heavy, but love is heavier still. Someone had to bear it, someone without blemish. So I did. The king's voice trembled not with pain, but with compassion. I bore it so they could live, though they would forget me for a time. Aidan fell to his knees, trembling. Then, "The blood that runs through me is the blood of remembrance," the king replied. "You are of my line, not by chance, but by covenant. When men forget, heaven remembers, and through your veins flows the memory of the eternal bond between the Maker and his creation." Light swelled around them, soft but overwhelming. Aidan's heart burned, not with fear, but awakening. He saw the entire kingdom, the people laughing under the sun, unaware of what sustained them. He saw the shrines crumbled, the songs unsung, yet beneath all that forgetting, a thread of light ran through every heart, faint, hidden but unbroken. "Go," the king said gently, "tell them that remembrance lives. Tell them that the price was paid not in wrath, but in love. Tell them that though I was forgotten, I never forgot them." His words filled the air like incense, warm, weightless, holy. The light around him began to fade, and the vision slowly dissolved into the stars. When Aidan opened his eyes, dawn was breaking. The sky blushed gold over the mountain's edge. The altar no longer glowed, but his heart did. In his veins he felt a pulse older than time, a rhythm that sang, "I remember, I am his." And as he stood upon the peak, the wind carried a final whisper, soft, proud, eternal. The blood remembers, even when the world forgets. Chapter 10. The dawn spilled over the mountains like liquid gold. Aidan stood at the summit, his cloak stirring in the quiet wind. The altar behind him glowed faintly, as though blessing his departure. The fire that burned within him was not a flame of anger or vengeance, but of remembrance, gentle, steady, eternal. As he began his descent, every step felt lighter, though his heart was heavy with what he had seen. He carried more than memory now. He carried legacy. The mountain path shimmered beneath his feet. Flowers bloomed where he walked, small silver blossoms that had not been seen in the kingdom for centuries. The wind followed him, singing softly through the trees. Even the air seemed to bow in reverence, sensing that something sacred had been reborn into the world of men. When Aidan reached the valley, the people gathered, drawn by an unseen call. The farmers left their ploughs, the children their games, the elders their counsels. They stared in wonder as the young prince emerged from the mist, his eyes alight with something unearthly. He said no word at first, only raised his hand to the heavens. The clouds parted instantly, and a shaft of sunlight pierced the earth like a golden crown. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some wept without knowing why. Others fell to their knees, trembling. "The king's heir," one whispered. "The blood of the forgotten." Aidan's voice broke the silence, calm yet commanding. "He lives," he said softly. "Not as shadow, nor as tale. The Alpha King still reigns, in the hearts of those who remember." His words were simple, but they struck the soul like thunder clothed in grace. As he spoke, the land began to change. The rivers brightened, their waters clearing to crystal blue. Trees swayed though no wind stirred. The air filled with a fragrance like spring after rain. Even the old shrines at the mountain's base began to glow faintly, the runes upon them awakening as though recognizing their true heir. The kingdom stirred from its long sleep. That night, torches blazed across the city, but not for war, for wonder. The people gathered in the great square, and Aidan told them the story that had been forgotten. He spoke of the Alpha King, of his love, his sacrifice, his promise. He told them that the curse they had borne was broken by one who bore no sin. As he spoke, some cried, others bowed, and many simply listened in silence, as if the truth itself were healing them. When his voice grew faint, Aidan lifted his gaze to the moon, which shone brighter than it had in centuries. For the first time since the king's passing, she no longer wept. Her light was full, radiant, triumphant. "He is not gone," Aidan whispered to the night. "He has only returned to the realm from which he came." The people followed his gaze and saw what he saw. Peace. The following days became a time of renewal. Old temples were rebuilt, not from fear, but from gratitude. Songs of remembrance filled the air once more, not as hymns of sorrow, but as melodies of awakening. The kingdom, once proud and blind, began to see again. And though the Alpha King did not walk among them in flesh, his presence was everywhere, in every breeze, every sunrise, every act of love that mirrored his. And when Aidan stood once more at the balcony of the palace, watching his people live in light, he smiled. The moon glowed above him, serene and whole. The wind brushed his hair and whispered softly, "The blood remembers." Aidan closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Then let them never forget again. Epilogue. The hidden truth. Centuries passed, and the story of the Alpha King became legend, told in songs etched in the stars, whispered to newborns beneath the full moon. But few truly understood it. They remembered the sacrifice. They remembered the love. Yet they did not grasp the fullness of what had been done, until the old scroll was found beneath the altar of the mountain temple. The scroll was written in a tongue no one alive could read. When Aidan touched it, however, the letters began to glow, and a voice filled the chamber, ancient, tender, and mighty all at once. "What you have called myth was a mirror of the eternal. What you have named Alpha was the name of the beginning." The words unfolded before him, and the truth burned bright as the sun. The Alpha King was not merely a ruler who loved his people. He was the creator who stepped into his own creation. He took upon himself the sins of the kingdom, though he was blameless, and bore their punishment so that mercy might reign instead of wrath. The curse he carried was not the curse of wolves, but the curse of men. The blood he shed was not for the howls of the wild, but for the souls of all who had wandered far from light. And the prophecy of his return was not about a throne of stone, but about the kingdom of light, where the moon would weep no more, because the sun of righteousness had risen forever. Aidan fell to his knees as tears filled his eyes. He saw now that every symbol, the wolf, the moon, the curse, the mountain, had all been shadows of a higher truth. The Alpha King was the Lamb, the warrior was the Redeemer, Jesus Christ, and the kingdom he died to save was the world itself. Then came the vision, vast, beyond description. A figure robed in light stood before the mountain, the scars upon his hands shining like stars. His eyes were fire, yet they carried the gentleness of eternal love. Around him gathered multitudes, kings and beggars, men and wolves, saints and sinners, and all knelt before him, crying, "Worthy is the Alpha who was slain." The moon bowed low, her silver tears turning into streams of living light that flowed into the valleys. The world was renewed. Death was undone. And from the highest peak came a sound like 1,000 trumpets, the eternal cry of triumph. It is finished. Aidan awoke on the mountainside, the dawn breaking once more. The scroll lay open beside him, glowing faintly. He looked to the heavens, and for the first time he understood. This was no tale of beasts. It was the story of the son of the great Alpha, the one who took the curse of the guilty and wore it as a crown, the one who died and rose again. He whispered into the wind, "Long live the Alpha King." And the wind answered softly, "Forever and ever."